Welcome to That's My Therapy. I'm Alicia Belzer, a master's student in adventure-based counseling and experiential education.
I'm Amanda Reedy, a clinical social worker working as a mental health therapist. Yes, our voices are the same. Try your best.
We are sisters and mental health professionals who spend our days chatting about what helps us grow, heal, and connect. We believe therapy is a great tool for healing. However, we hope to demystify what healing can look like. As in our experience, humans are intuitive, creative, and determined when it comes to caring for themselves.
Each episode, we will get curious about therapeutic things that aren't traditional talk therapy. We will break down why those things might be helpful from a clinical lens.
Let's get it. Next up, we interviewed Malachi and Ryan from Portland-based band Small Million. Small Million is a band whose tasteful lyrics have permeated my every thought since first listening to their music. And their songs are honestly nothing short of musical therapy. And Ryan and Malachi were so gracious to share their experience with making music that means something. So here's our interview with Malachi and Ryan.
Did you get a little bit of a rundown of what we're all about?
Therapy,
music, the power of feelings, Yeah, you pretty much nailed it. So we're both mental health professionals. She's
wonderful.
A clinical social worker. I'm in my master's program for adventure-based counseling.
Oh,
cool. And we are doing a podcast to kind of explore how therapy shows outside of the therapy office, right?
Neat. That people naturally find in their lives in order to find growth, healing,
cool.
Yeah, all of that, because we just know that therapy can be so much more than just sitting in a room with
awesome. Yeah, cool. And rarely starts or ends.
That's why that's my therapy. It's
exactly. Thank you. And, okay, I guess we'll jump right in.
Yeah.
So, kind of like we were saying, the point of therapy isn't necessarily to feel better, although that often is the result, right? But it is more of a means to understand deeper truths about ourselves, process and move through past experiences, and integrate growth moving forward. So with that being said, does music do any or all of those things for you?
That's so well put.
like listening to music or making music or just music in general?
Any part of the process.
Songwriting process, performing. We've talked to several artists, and it seems like some people, each stage has its own meaning, and some feels the most therapeutic, and some feels
definitely
less so.
For me, I guess listening to music is probably more therapeutic than writing. But writing music feels great, but listening. I would say listening.
Listening to music is the most therapeutic. Yeah, I do. So I'm more the lyricist of the project, so I have to kind of, we've talked about this in the writing process, but Ryan builds these really emotional worlds, but then I have to go deep into my own experiences, and so that is definitely feels like a growth process of finding lessons or feelings or tapping into what I have learned. But you can only I heard recently you can only write at the speed of your own self-awareness. That's sort of the limiting factor, at least as a lyricist, is that or this is, I think I heard this from a nonfiction writer, but it's when you're creating word-based art that's personal, a lot of that is you have to live your life to have anything to process and write about. Go ahead.
Would you say that writing has become more therapeutic as time has gone on because you've been getting more personal?
I definitely when I first started writing songs, I don't think I had gone through much. I didn't have much that needed processing, and then since we that was more I used to write songs that were a lot more story based or a lot more history based or drawing on poetry or different things. It was a little bit more of an intellectual exercise, and I think as we write together more, it's like, especially Ryan really encourages this. Ryan is sort of my therapist in a way, like a producer.
We do that for each other.
A producer is a therapist in some ways. It's like, really, is that? I think we can go a little deeper on that.
Yeah.
But has really encouraged me for it to be less of an intellectual exercise and more of an emotional exercise.
Yeah.
And that those songs we ultimately like better anyway. Like songs that go deeper to the core are. That's what I enjoy listening to as well.
Exactly.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Something that Malachi talks about here reminded me of a quote that goes from Einstein: "No problem can be solved at the same level of consciousness by which it was created." And it's sounding like music is a means by which to get to a deeper place, to either process an experience or to understand something deeper about ourselves.
And then like going to a live show as therapy too, like being in the crowd with a collective, like that is, I remember like the first show we played after lockdown, or the first show I played it, I guess it was a solo show. Just something about the removal for a little bit of like not having live music gave me the like, I got to see it almost for the first time of like, oh my, is this what this does for people in a room? Like we kind of like took it for granted, but then when you're back in the room, it was like, this is the closest I get to a church-like experience. Like this sort of like collective healing and like everybody, the difference between just like, it's just me watching something on a screen or listening to something. That's kind of a one-to-one relationship, but it is almost, it's like group therapy in the like, we are triangulating with each other. They're like, we are experiencing the same like emotional piece of art and we get to have our own reactions to it. But there's also something about the feeling of being in a crowd or being in a theater space or watching live performance where it's like, I am also triangulating emotionally and co-regulating with the people like next to me, and that whole process of like how we are all relating to these performers is like, that feels super healing to me.
Here is how I know Malachi and Ryan are also secretly therapists. One, they use terms like co-regulating, and two, Amanda and I, you'll hear this in all our interviews, we use the therapeutic a lot, which just means I understand and felt fully what you just shared. And you can hear Malachi and Ryan use the therapeutic consistently. And you can feel how therapeutically hyped up we all are about each other's empathy.
You put that so well. And we were talking with this last band about mirror neurons and how so much of our regulatory nervous system feeds off like the emotions and signs of others, including like animals and stuff. You see a calm animal, it regulates your own nervous system. It's like getting into these live spaces. An author, I love the way she puts it, is it's the opportunity to all fall in love with each other at the same time.
Ooh, I love that.
And it's just kind of, that reflection of a more positive internal space.
Yeah. Totally.
When you were just talking, a thought that I had that I hadn't really thought about before is that even, I mean, of course there is this relationship between like the audience and the performer, but sometimes it is the relationship between the audience itself. Like, like I love going to the movies and stuff, and it's such a different experience, even if you're watching a screen with a group of people, and like the emotions of the people, if it's like laughter, if it's sadness, it's like that all feeds into it as well.
It's also the difference, like as a performer playing for like a great crowd that is in it and is in it with each other versus like even if you have the same number of people but people are detached or people are on their phones or people are just not present. I think I really like the feel. We had a great experience last night. So we went and saw Son Rompe Pera, which is like they're from Mexico City. We saw them at the Cora Shrine. And I didn't know anything about them. Like I just like found them through the app, and we get to this show and just get to go, like not knowing what you're walking into, the feeling of discovery, like the feeling of catharsis of like, oh, this rocks. It was like, the dancing is a huge element of it, and I know dance is like a huge huge influence for you in terms of moving out feelings and like feeling what you're feeling. But that was like getting to feel the vibe of the crowd. It was like a punk cumbia band. It was so great.
Yeah, they were controlling the crowd and like escalating it. So by the end of the performance, everyone's like, oh.
We walked out of there like out of our minds, like just like what just happened. They had everybody get low, like everybody like they directed us physically all together too. So it was like they were like bajo, 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 like everybody get low to the ground, and then all of a sudden they're like boom, everybody up, so and powerful, like just remember it was really inspirational. Like as far as seeing performers kind of work with a crowd, it was so cool, and people loved it. And that was cross language too. So like they were everything they were saying on stage was mostly in Spanish, and everybody was just like
the message was universal.
Totally.
To have a collective somatic experience.
It really was. It totally was.
I think performers get to be the container. Like sometimes therapy.
Yes.
You come to a therapy office and it's like this is the container for things, and everything can be welcome and seen and witnessed in here. And then the therapist is kind of in charge of holding that space. And I just wonder, I feel like that's what artists can do.
Totally.
And, like, that's what sounds like that performance was.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's part of, like, that is something that takes practice in performance. And then I think it takes, like, in building that container, it's interesting too because in music you can't do it alone. I mean, you can do like maybe a folk musician with a guitar in a library can like they are creating that container. But when you're playing in a rock band, like you have to have like a sound engineer who can like help you build that world. You have to have you have to hold the energy and bring in like, you know, all of the practice and all of that, and then you also have to kind of trust that like. You know, let us build this space together, but let like the lights are part of that. The physical, like the you're creating a really collective thing, so that everybody can just kind of trust fall into your musical thing you're building.
Do you remember any like specific moments in your life when creating or performing or any part of the process, producing music, has helped you move through it, or otherwise like brought you to maybe a new, higher perspective of what was going on?
Let me think.
I don't know. It's just so different because I don't write from that perspective. But I get that again from listening. I could like it when you say that. It just reminds me of certain moments of being in an audience and having that catharsis and being able to push past something that I'm going through emotionally. But I don't write from that angle. I'm writing from maybe I'm working through something that I don't realize I'm working through, but I'm like it's more hedonistic probably, I guess, than anything.
We have a phrase where like if you could have thought your way out of something, you probably would have done it by now. So it's probably great that you said like I wasn't aware of it, but it moved me through it. It's like you don't need to think about anything now.
I want to completely validate Ryan's experience of listening to music being maybe more so how he processes or feels his emotions than creating it. There's psychological evidence that listening to music we don't like when we're upset or stressed will absolutely exponentially increase those emotions. And then there's also evidence that we can formulate what we listen to help guide us through an emotional experience. I actually know that Ryan is good at this because I admit that I have been following Ryan on Spotify, and he curates the most beautiful playlists that have personally guided me through many an emotional experience since I found them.
I've had helpful experiences like sometimes songwriting from other people's perspectives. So it's like if I that can be kind of like a taking on in a not something about it feel like something about like singing a melody from the other person's perspective in my own breakup is like, ooh, that is like really putting me through.
Like, what a challenge of empathy.
And it like that has been really healing for me is like writing songs of like even if I can also write, and I do like I can write the other perspective too. I'll write the response song, but like for me at least taking on, like, what's your own internal logic here? Like, why did you do that? Like, what did you go through that made you treat me like that? And like, how can I empathize with that? Writing about something from like many different angles like that, I think, has been really helpful on the lyrical side of things. Yeah.
Malachi brings up some great points here. There's a technique in Gestalt therapy called the empty chair. And it's where a person conducts an emotional dialogue with some aspect, either of themselves or a significant person. This could be a parent or, as Malachi referenced, a past partner. And that person is imagined to be sitting in an empty chair during the experience. And as the individual walks through this experience, they bring a voice and perspective to someone or something that had a voice in the overall experience, but maybe the individual could not have accessed that perspective without first sitting with them in the chair. Malachi is actually doing pretty highbrow therapy when writing these types of lyrics.
I'm also thinking, again, less from maybe the actual sitting down and writing part, but and maybe less so from performing in front of people, but when we get together at practice, I've noticed for, not only for me, like for Kale and maybe you as well, it's like you could be having like a hard day and then you get together and sometimes you're like, oh man, we got to practice. Right. And then once you go through it, you're like, oh, that felt so good to like connect and like, but it only works when everyone's like connecting and that can
shift things.
Yeah.
So true. It can make a day a lot better. And it's like you get there as kind of an obligation, and then you're like, oh, I get to make something with other people.
I forgot I love this. This is why
I have to trust the process and then get out of my own way.
Totally.
Yeah. You kind of already spoke to this, but I guess we can narrow it down on like specifically performing. What's going on, mind, body, like maybe before you have a show upcoming tonight. How are you feeling before? Yeah. And then if you can speak to like what's happening in your body during, and then what happens. It's an intense experience. How do you integrate that in the hours, days, weeks that follow?
That's incredible.
Do you want me to talk?
You go first. You go first.
Well, performing for me is actually really hard and difficult, and I feel I'm getting a little bit better at as time goes on. But well, it's funny actually because. So Ben, our drummer, his wife is a therapist, and they were talking about this idea of exposure therapy and how just like the more you do, it's like the better you get. But so for me, it's anxious. Going on stage, being in a zone, I'm still not quite there at the point where I can like look at the audience. But then afterwards, especially if everything clicks and it goes well, then, or even if it doesn't actually, once you're done, there's the show high that comes no matter what. But sometimes being on stage is hard. If you like mess up a tiny bit, then you can spiral. And again, right before going on is that's a lot, but for me personally. But
for me, the most physically stressful part is like right before. So like setting all you're setting all the gear up. For me, it's like technical anxiety. Once I know it's working, everything's plugged in, it's happening, then I can drop kind of into a different zone, and then it's just like, okay, we're driving. It's like hitting the road for a road trip or something, and then it's like, okay, we're on the road. I will deal with things as they come up, but like I can kind of stay in a flow. And I think that's really important for kind of building the container. And I feel like as the vocalist, I feel it is once it is happening.
I like to say that.
He razzes me. I did not think of myself as a front person. But I do think that a lot of the work of building that container, like I kind of have to do that lyrically, and so once the show is happening, I am paying a lot more attention to vibes than like technical specifics, and Ryan stays with his head a bit more in technical specifics, which is great. Like somebody kind of has to. But like for me, it is more important to like hold the energy all together. Once we're playing a show, I'm having a great time generally. Whether or not you can hear yourself is like the hardest thing in live music. It's like that's what so much of, you know, getting sound check right, or like being able to know that what you're doing is coming through out in the room is one of the most stressful pieces of the puzzle. But yes, once we have made the world and I have set up my gear, then I try and drop in.
Right.
Yeah. And then afterwards, yeah, it's great.
Do you feel, when you're saying setting up, that's just at sound check, and then once sound check is done, do you feel excited before going on stage?
Excited.
Versus anxious, or like...
I'm just in a holding pattern. It's like you push pause on the VHS, and then I try to keep it right in the middle. I'm like not excited. Excitement and anxiety are like sisters. I'm like,
for sure.
I'm just like, we're gonna go do this on stage.
Yeah. It is. Yeah. Band dynamics too, like, because Kale and I are a little bit more on the anxious side when it comes to the performance thing, and so I feel like Ben and you have to make up for it and like be that balance, but like, and then sometimes that flips, like if let's say there is a technical issue and you are stressed, then all of a sudden I find myself having to be more like, okay, maybe I have to act more confident or something. I don't know.
That kind of happens a lot, that whenever anything goes wrong in any regard, whichever one of us gets like upset first, the other one's like, okay, swing in the other direction. Everything is fine. This is going to be great. Don't even worry about it. This happens like every time. It's just like the duo dynamic.
I think our nervous systems feel really good when we have a role to fill. So when someone might be holding a role for a long time and that gets set down, it feels uncomfortable if nobody picks it up. So if someone is like the stabilizer for a group, and then all of a sudden this person is like, I'm gonna panic today. It's like there's an unfulfilled role in.
I'm like, allow me to take that.
And someone's like, I got it.
Like a teeter-totter. You're just
and
like,
sometimes that feels like comfortable for the person. Like it gives you an opportunity to maybe step into a role. Like, this actually helps update my nervous system.
That's so interesting.
I can step up when needed.
And I would venture to say that your anxiety makes you more equipped to pick that up and handle when someone else is anxious, because you can tap into like, I know exactly what you're feeling.
That's really cool. You are very good at comforting me. Like, I don't think of myself as an anxious person. I'm a controlling person. And when I
Those are the same thing.
Manifests in different ways.
When I lose control, it doesn't feel good. And I need to deal with that. But, okay, interesting. Good intel I'm getting here.
That is interesting.
But yeah, you're so comforting. Like when one of us is freaking out, the other one can be like, "Oh, okay, no, I got this." Those are the same thing.
And that was like not the most therapeutic way to say
that. No, it's okay. She's an anxious person. We have something to talk about later. No.
Okay. I guess maybe my anxiety isn't about the same things as your anxiety, but
I also want to point out that being the anxious one is also an important role as someone who's like, okay, I want to make sure someone is thinking about these details. So, and that can fall to you, and it can't be. It's not the most fun.
Interesting. I think we're both thinking about a lot of details all the time, but like different details. So we'll be staying anxious about like different sides of the brain.
You are 100% anxious, but but when it comes to different things, like less so maybe performance stuff, but maybe like other things, business.
Yeah, definitely business or social media or like distribution, or I'm just like, but I think that's good. Like it's like that means we have those roles in different areas.
You spoke to this a little bit earlier, but you obviously don't do this work alone, right? Like you're part of a band. You even mentioned like a team just putting a show together. And then the community that you perform in, and then beyond that, like you're part of a larger body of work that's creating music for other people. So if you can speak to that a little bit about that, what does that feel like in those places?
I think of a lot of what we do as world building and whether that's like our music itself is trying to like create a world for the listener, but then we also do that in collaboration, like in concentric circles. So whether that's, you know, at a live show, we're like collaboratively building a world, you know, before anyone gets there, we're working with the sound engineer, we're working with the production manager, we're working with our band. And then the audience gets there and they're helping us build that world too. Yeah. Like that is part of, you know, we couldn't be doing what we're doing unless they're there. It's like you're saying, you know, you put down one, you know, we put on the stage role, they put on the audience role, but then we're here walking around and like sometimes we're stepping into the audience role and like all of us are taking on these kind of different elements. But then, like you say too, just kind of expanding that circle into like even the music we enjoy, or like our friends who also make music, or just getting to be fans of other artists. Like,
I know, and I guess it makes me think of just the idea of like not knowing your role, but everyone has different things that they're good at, and the more you involve other people who specialize, like the better the art gets, the better the community gets, et cetera, et cetera. So it's like if you just look at our whole process, like starting just out with just the two of us, is like we had this collaboration that was building, but then we're just like, oh, actually, you know, having a mix engineer to mix the music is going to make it sound better than a mastering engineer. And then, oh, you know, I like beats, but I'm not a drummer. You bring in a drummer. It's like we have a harmony singer, and then layers on layers, and the same thing with the business side. Now you have a label, and then they specialize and help, and the more people you include, just the better everything becomes.
That's been the amazing perspective that we heard from like everyone we've interviewed, is like you take this single idea and then you filter it through the minds of like 100 people, and then no one has been like, well, my original idea was lost. Like no one has said that by sharing with all these people that it has been made. It's only been made better.
I think collaborating with visual artists has been another really huge part of the process. So like whether it's working with people on album art, I feel really lucky with the people we've worked with for single art and album art, and just getting to find people where it's like, okay, your work speaks to us. This is our music. How can we meet, or working on whether it's making music videos or like finding that kind of collaboration is so much fun.
Totally.
Definitely.
It's so vulnerable. Every person that you ask in is like a little bit of like, this is a little piece of my soul. Please hold it gently. And they go, I got it. Let me elevate it a little bit. And add my own little piece of my own soul. And then you get this beautiful product. And it shines through with your music, because we are a huge band. Sweet. I've been listening to the new, because your manager sent us your new album too,
and like press release.
And we're just loving.
Oh my gosh,
we've been a little bit obsessed.
Awesome. There's more coming.
So excited.
I'm very excited. We'll wrap up because I know you guys have to go. But last question: is there anything music has taught you about yourself that maybe you might have not known otherwise?
Can you trim out silence?
Editing is incredible. I have very, dare I say, like neurodivergent pauses. It's like maybe minutes. Like, take a walk.
I'll be back in 5. Music taught me sometimes how to let go of things. I think that has been a like collaboration with Ryan in particular, like building a really long term creative partnership. Like this is my longest term partnership, and it is all through the lens of this musical collaboration, and having someone I really, really trust be able to say like, I know that feels like your best thing ever, but like we can do better, or like we can that we can let go of. The iterative process of that, having a partnership with someone you really trust that can see you almost more clearly than you can see yourself. I would say that like that part of the creative process is the biggest way that I've grown through music.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I feel like it's taught. collaboration has taught us a lot about what it means to be in a relationship. And all relationships have that back and forth, have that balance, have compromise, that's a good answer. I second that. With the whole listening thing too, I find, even though I find catharsis in your lyrics, I'm like, working with you is also part listening as well. So like, even though I might not be getting that from my own writing process, but like writing with you does do that, because you do the heavy lifting.
We talk a lot, like to get to the things that we get to and to get to the deeper ideas. Like Ryan is the best emotional processor / like, gossip sometimes. But like I tell you things I've got, like there's not a breakup I've gone through that I have not been like crying on your couch, and he's like extending the microphone across the couch. He's like, yes, feel it.
The more vulnerable you are, I feel like the more things resonate with other people. It's people compare,
totally.
Yeah.
All of your answers have shown like the beauty of community too, whether it's a community of like the crowd that you're performing at, or the community of just your band as a whole. And there hasn't been like a single selfish answer. It's always been other people doing this for me. So I think that's really beautiful from music, but producing music as well.
Thank you.
And you're giving us this gift despite crippling anxiety.
Oh, the one last thing I thought of, this was total when we were picking our band names so long ago. But Small Million comes from an E.E. Cummings poem, and I think it ended up really suiting what the project has become. So it's a small million of tiny voices is the full quote, which I think has ended up being really indicative of like how we call in other voices and like are finding our own in that process too.
Definitely. I'm so glad you shared that. Both of those were great. Y'all have been awesome. Thank you so much for meeting with us. If you're open to it, we would love to like play a clip or a song to promote your work.
Definitely.
And do you have one in mind that like maybe represents something we've talked about today?
I think Overkill, yeah.
We were hoping you'd say that.
Like Overkill is like some of my psychic shit.
Thank you so much. It was really great.
Wow, Ryan and Malachi, that interview will stick with me for some time, and
the show was so good too. We did get to go to
their show, and it was the finale of our TREEFORT experience, and Malachi on stage, actually, she put it, I think, the best when she said, it feels like we've had a massive like Thanksgiving dinner of TREEFORT, and that their show was just the last little bits of bread that they were like sopping up the juices from the TREEFORT experience, and just like, and it wasn't it the last several most delicious bites.
But for me, I said that they were the whole damn meal for me. I loved it. Yeah, and they played songs that I think are unreleased, and I don't even know what song it is, but that one where she said, what if I listened to my body and it led me to my soul? And I was like, I looked at you
whatever.
Like, oh my gosh, so beautiful.
You played several songs that Amanda and I looked at each other. I was like, well, I'm going to be playing that in every therapy session that I'm facilitating in the next year.
You did fall a little bit in love with their bass player.
Chill.
Especially when they started singing.
No.
It was tingles for you, I could tell.
No, that's... each band, I fell in love with each band member in their own right, but just know that each of you have very desirable qualities.
We are going to play Overkill here in just a second, but that is the end of our TREEFORT experience. Massive thank you to Ryan and Malachi and Joe Hertler and Strange Lily, Chloe and Jacob, and Shannon from the Stone Foxes. You made this week so memorable. Hearing these artists talk about their experiences collaborating with other artists and people in the industry, to me, it's a call that we need more people involved in this podcast. We want to hear your voices, your opinions, your thoughts, your experiences. No experience is made worse by filtering it through other people. please reach out to us. And in the meantime, here is Overkill by Small Million.
Amanda, are we doing it again next year?
It's just like really late at night.
I'm so tired.
I'm so tired. Okay, I think hopefully next year.
Thanks for listening to That's My Therapy. If you are seeking resources to care for your mental health, a good place to start is Psychology Today's list of qualified practitioners in your area, or by contacting your insurance provider to get a list of in-network clinicians. If you are feeling suicidal or needing immediate help, you can reach the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline by dialing or texting 988.